Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. In this week's video I will reveal and hopefully fix a dirty, shameful secret of mine. I want to make a new preventer for our mainsail, and also there might be a little woodworking project. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the top sides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. First off, I've got a little bit of good news regarding the drive units for our autopilot, the whole reason why I'm stuck here in Mandela right now. Both units have been refurbished and we've shipped them to the US. They seem to have arrived without any damage, and they're with Ava now, ready for her to fly back over here. And then when she gets here, we can finally start crossing the Atlantic. Before I reveal my dirty, shameful secret, I just want to take a minute to just apologize for the mess here on the boat, and also apologize for a little bit of a continuity issue in this and possibly next week's video. You might see a vent up there on the main bulkhead. That is because I'm in the middle of installing air conditioning, but there were some parts I couldn't get here on the island, so I'm waiting for Ava to bring those, so I'm recording this video in the midst of the air conditioning project. Anywho, let's get to the dirty, shameful part of the video. It's hiding here inside of our hanging locker. Yikes, this looks a little bit shiny, to be honest. I swear at one point it was all neatly cable managed and looked really tidy. But I think it all spiraled out of control when we were in Gosport. We unstepped the mast, and I didn't get it all tidied up when we put the mast back on, and then we added more electronics, and yeah, like I said, it just kind of spiraled out of control. And I think the red flashing up here on our C-Zone digital switching indicates some kind of configuration issue, but everything seems to work. But we also better take care of that. During the last week, I spent quite a lot of time here inside of the hanging locker getting started on the air conditioning install. And the lighting in here is horrible. Right now I'm just using my phone in here, but yeah, there is no lighting in here, which makes it kind of annoying to do stuff in here. So I think the first step is going to be to add a light. Fortunately, I had this bag with 2 LED lights on the boat. I think I've had this one kicking around for something like 8 years. The little guy here is going to be the perfect size to fit up behind the door so you don't get blinded by the light when you open the door. And I know this is something Ava's probably going to be super excited about, so this is also a little bit of a surprise for her. I picked up this tool for stripping wires about 5 years ago. For smaller gauges of wire and the occasional use aboard a boat, it's been awesome. If you're going to be doing a bunch of wiring aboard your boat, I highly recommend you pick one up. I'll include a link down in the description. I added heat shrink and pre-tinned all of the wires before joining them. Please excuse my shaking here, I'm standing at a little bit of an odd angle. After having dug through the box of untold treasures here, I've found 2 screws that are going to be absolutely perfect for mounting the light. I think my best option for mounting the light here inside of the locker is going to be up behind the door, somewhere up here. That way when you open the door and look in from the outside, you're not going to get blinded by the light. In terms of powering the light, I've got some different options here. I can either go off of the interior light here in the forward cabin, or I've got 2 available outputs on this digital switching box. Now that I've revealed my closet of shame here, I might also point out this fuse here that's up in the high position on the digital switching box. That's because I'm continuously supplying power to that circuit and just completely ignoring the digital switching box. That's because that's the Philips Hue light here in the forward cabin, and I just use my phone to turn that on and off with. But yeah, if I get that programmed, I can also move that fuse down so that we can control it with the digital switching, and that will also make my closet of shame less shameful. For the digital switching to be able to do its magic, we need to connect the red wire here to the Control 6 Plus box, and then the black wire to the negative bus in the hanging locker. We'll need a ring terminal for the connection to the negative bus bar and a ferrule for the connection to the digital switching box. That looks absolutely perfect. All that's left now is to figure out how to fuse our little light. Now there's no information from the manufacturer, but they do say that it draws 8 watts. So 8 divided by 12 volts nominal, that's going to be, I don't know, let's round up and say 0.7 of an amp. So let's see what we've got in terms of fuses. So it looks like the smallest fuse I've got is 1 amp. That should be perfect for this. Now the cable I'm using here is 0.5 square millimeter cable. That's the smallest gauge I've used on the boat. Now the rating on this is, depending on installation location and temperature rating, somewhere between 15 and 25 amps. So yeah, this is way overkill. I've already connected the wires in here, so if we just whack the fuse in the digital switching box, then we should have lights in here. Oh, that is very bright. Well, now that we can see all of my shame and excruciatingly bright light, let's go ahead and start cleaning this up. As you can see, I've got conduit in here for running everything in, and I've used these little black cable ties here with adhesive on the back and a screw through the front of them to kind of be washers for the conduit. That gives me somewhere where I can attach a zip tie to keep all the wires in check. Here's an example where I haven't added the zip tie yet. You can see the screw poking out in there. The reason for the screw is because the adhesive on these things is always kind of shiny, and well, you need screws anyways to secure the conduit, so you might as well add it through the doohickey. That was a really cool tip I got from one of the other liveaboards back in Ski Resort. Thank you so much, Emil. I realized that the other LED light might be nice to have in the chain locker, so I decided to run a bit of cable out there, and while doing that, I got an idea for another surprise for Ava, her very own USB charger plug on her side of the bed. I'd like to add one to my side too, but that'll have to wait until we do the headliner. Done with my little detours, it was finally time to tidy up the hanging locker. I shortened a bunch of the wiring and also moved the NMEA 2000 connections to the other side to have less cables running from one side to the other. After a couple of hours fiddling around, I got the covers reattached and the hanging locker started looking way less shame infested. The last task of the day was to wire up and install the light in the chain locker. Feast your eyes on this, a very, very illuminated chain locker, a nice and tidy hanging locker, and not only the USB charger for Ava, but also I fixed our button up there so that Ava can turn on and off all of the lights here in the forward cabin. For just being stuck here in Mindelo and having to do something to not just twiddle my thumbs, I think today was well worth it. You guys saw yesterday that the physical wiring for the 2 new lights work, but I would like for the light in the hanging locker to come on when we turn on the lights in the forward cabin, and then I would like for the light in the chain locker to just be a virtual button on our chart plotters. This is a great opportunity because now that I've gone through the trouble of busting out my Windows laptop, which is needed for configuring the CZone stuff, I can also go ahead and add the chart plotter out by the helm to our CZone stuff so we can do the digital switching from that one too. These numbers over here represents the dip switch setting on different modules on the CZone network, and these need to be unique. And I've already checked the chart plotter out by the helm, and I think we have a conflict. If you take a look at the number here for our output interface, that is the same number as here on the chart plotter, so we'll have to modify that. After having modified the dip switch setting and added our MFD as a new display interface in the configuration tool, we now have our 3 chart plotters in the configuration tool. Right here is the new one, Garmin Helm. That means if we OK this and just go to switching, now we have all of our buttons here on the chart plotter. But we still need to add the 2 new circuits from yesterday, the light in the hanging locker and the light in the chain locker. Adding a load to the configuration tool with the option to create a circuit check will automatically create the circuit. So let's do that, and we'll say it's lighting and OK. Now we have our 2 new circuits. We have our hanging locker lights and our chain locker lights. Now we just need to add circuit controls. It's been a while since I've done this, but I think because I have multiple outputs I want to control with one switch, I'll have to add a virtual circuit. All of my virtual circuits are named VCs, so let's go ahead and see if this works. Fingers crossed. Uh-oh, we got an alarm for a blown fuse in the forward hanging locker. Which makes perfect sense because Captain Dum-Dum forgot to add the fuses this morning after having turned off the light in here last night to be able to sleep. Let's see if it works. Now this is gonna flicker to the camera, but to the human eye it's a perfectly smooth transition. works. Awesome. I've also allowed these lights to be dimmable. Now again, that's going to look horrible on camera, but to the human eye it looks perfectly smooth and there's no flickering. I've already added the circuit and the load for the light in the chain locker and written that configuration to the C-cell network. So all we have to do to add the switch to the chart plotter is to go into the chart plotter and, well, select the switch to add. Power chain locker lights. Boop. And now we've got a switch up here for controlling the light in the chain locker. If you look into the forward cabin by the opening into the chain locker, you might be able to see the light coming on. Ta-da! And off again. Perfect. Of course, it would be nice with a physical switch for the light in the chain locker also, but I think we'll hold off until we get to the US and I can get my hands on another one of these panels here. These are super nice because they give you a ton of switches in a small footprint. So if we toss one of these in the forward cabin, then we'll have more switches than we'll ever need. I know there are certain things about Athena's state that annoys some of you guys. I think the most requested thing for me to fix is the nav station. There's a hole up here and a little hole down there. But that is going to wait until most likely the summer we're in the US, this coming summer. But there is something else I'm hoping I'll be able to fix this week, and that's that little woodworking project I mentioned in the beginning of the video. There's a dangling wire up here and also a distinct lack of trim around this hatch. When Ava and I were in Chichester at the James workshop this last winter, we made all of the trim pieces. So for me to fix this, all I think I have to do is to glue this up, and then I might have to do a little bit of a modification up here, but hopefully that won't be too bad. But let's start by gluing this up. There's a distinct lack of paper or plastic cups here in Mendello, so I had to repurpose an old water bottle to mix the epoxy. After having mixed said epoxy, I wetted out the ends of the wood first to make sure I don't end up with a dry bond. In all likelihood, it would have been fine, but it's easy to make absolutely sure by pre-wetting the surfaces. I thickened the epoxy with West Systems 406. This stuff has excellent gap-filling properties and you don't need any clamping force to get a strong bond, which is why you won't see me using any clamps. I applied a little dab of thickened epoxy and made sure that the frame was as square as possible. I then double-checked that by making sure that the diagonal measurements were identical. It's the next morning and the epoxy should now have cured enough that I can start attempting to cram this guy up there. This much longer piece here is for a little bit of trim in the aft cabin, but this will have to conform to the shape of the cockpit coaming, which means it'll have to bend a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited to see if these little tiny scuff joints here are going to be up for that. Even though the epoxy feels nice and hard, it can take multiple days for it to fully cure. So we might as well set this aside and just take every little advantage we can get. I removed the headliner from both sides of the hatch. Upon taking a closer look, there were definitely some small bumps I'd need to remove. I offered up the trim and it looked like we were pretty close to a tight fit. I hand sanded the corners to remove the tiny bit of squeeze out and did another test fit. We're very, very close. Getting rid of the bumps was going to be a dusty mess, so I decided to put up a bit of plastic in an attempt to keep the boat cleanish. After a light bit of sanding with Mr. Angle Grinder, the trim was a nice, snug, perfect fit. This is the way the hatch trim was originally made for the Warriors. It's simple, easy to put together, and does a good job of hiding the exposed edges. Finally, I was able to put the headliner back in place. This certainly looks much, much spiffier than before, and also no more dangling wire. Now, speaking of the headliner, you may have noticed that it's looking very unfinished. It's, for one, exposed plywood, and also in certain areas it's sagging a bit, like over here, for instance. That's simply just because it's not finished yet. The headliner is one of the last big unfinished projects, besides, of course, the small stuff over here. But yeah, all of that is on the to-do list for our upcoming summer in the US. But for now, let's get on to the preventer. Last spring in France, I made this guy, our current preventer. He serves, well, kind of one purpose, and that is to lock down the boom so that it doesn't move, but also so that we don't have any decapitations if we do get an accidental jibe. The way the preventer is set up is by attaching the gray line to this blue line and then running the gray line up by a cleat up on the bow through a low friction ring and then back here along the port side of the boat. It's worked really well so far. We haven't had any big issues, but there's a small usability issue in the fact that if we want to flop the mainsail over to the other side, then we have to re-rig the preventer, and that involves a trip up on the foredeck. Now that's not the end of the world, but I think we can improve on it. The reason for the blue line here that's attached to the end of the boom is so that we can always, no matter which side the boom is on, get to the bitter end of this to fiddle around with it. I really like that, so we'll need a second one of these. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment. I don't know if we'll have too much clutter up on deck, but here is the old setup. As you can see, the end of the preventer is always on the port side, and we're only using one winch down there. Now we do have two winches we can use for it in the cockpit, so the new plan is to have a line on each side of the boat. The one that's not on the side that we're using is just loose. As you can see here, it's just a squiggly line representing a slack line, and this one is tight over here, whereas over here it's the reverse, tight, and this one is slack. I picked up a little bit of this very nice and very expensive Dyneema line at the local chandlery. Hopefully this will be enough for the new setup. With this new preventer setup, we shouldn't have to go up on the foredeck to re-rig the preventer ever. Now, going up on the foredeck, like I said, is not the end of the world, but we do have a rule here aboard Athena that we don't leave the cockpit unless there's somebody else in the cockpit to keep an eye on us. And well, that can mean having to wait until a watch change or having to wake somebody up. With this new setup, we shouldn't have to worry about that. I busted out my little splicing tools bag that I made before we left the Canary Islands. I absolutely love this little bag, and I plan to make a lot more of these for organizing loose items in the future. Like I mentioned, this is a line with a core made out of Dyneema rather than a core made out of polyester, so the eye splice I'm making is slightly different than the one I would use for a polyester core. Generally speaking, I find this method a little bit easier than the one I use for lines with polyester core. I'll include links for two really good detailed videos that show both methods. If memory serves, these were the videos I used when I first learned how to make eye splices. No matter the method, the most annoying part of the process is usually milking the cover back over the splice, meaning getting all of the exposed core back inside of the cover. I repeated the process at the other end of the red line to give me an eye splice at each end before moving on to the green line. The good news is the splicing is done. I've just finished the green line here and the red line is already installed up on the boom. Now, I'm no experienced splicer by any stretch of the imagination, but I have spliced a few different brands of lines over the years, and well, they're not all equally easy to work with. There's a chunk of skin missing over here, there's a blister there's another blister under this band-aid. Very sore here, so that's probably going to turn into another blister. Whatever brand this line is, it certainly takes the prize for the most annoying line I've ever spliced. And this is the new preventer rigged. Hopefully you can see the red line there turning into the green one, then up to a block on the forward cleat there. Coming back here, there's a low friction ring here to deflect it a little bit, and then back to a winch. The only thing I don't really love about the new setup is the fact that the loose line is running across the deck. It's not a big issue, it's just more clutter up on deck. So yeah, hopefully the new setup will be better. If not, we can always revert to the version 1 preventer. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little bit of a mixed bag video. I feel really good about having some of those projects checked off the list, like for instance tidying up that wiring in the hanging locker. That was bugging me for a while, so it's nice to have the time to take care of stuff like that. Now in terms of next week, I think I have another couple of tiny woodworking projects. There's some sapelli underneath the V-berth that needs to go up, some trim in the forward cabin. That's the last bit of trim in there, I think. And then I think we have enough scrap to cobble together a temporary cockpit table. Ava's been wanting a cockpit table for a long time, and if I can find some non-rusting hinges here on the island, then I should be able to do that. I'll end this week's video here and go see if I can find a band-aid for my other finger. But yeah, I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!